For thousands of years, stone has watched silently. It has seen civilizations rise and fall, felt the sting of sandstorms, and endured the thunder of invasions. These statues, these monuments, they stood through the rise of empires and the weaving of lies. They stood against the sharp strike of the chisel and the quiet shame of theft. They stood, even as they were crated up and shipped away, destined for foreign museums. They stood, even as textbooks were written that forgot their names, that erased their context, that rewrote their very meaning. Still, they stood. Broken, yes, but standing. Damaged, absolutely, but present. They were more than just artifacts. They were silent witnesses, holding a truth that time and human hands tried desperately to bury. They were waiting for centuries, through the noise and the silence, for someone, for anyone, to finally look upon their weathered faces and ask the one question that matters most. What really happened here? Today, we are those people. We are asking that question. We are peeling back the layers of propaganda and colonial narratives that have shrouded Africa's history for far too long. We're looking past the caricatures and rediscovering the brilliant, complex, and powerful civilizations that thrived across the continent. This isn't just about correcting history. It's about reclaiming an identity. Think of the great Zimbabwe, a magnificent stone city that flourished for centuries, a center of trade and power, or the University of Timbuktu, a beacon of knowledge in the medieval world, housing hundreds of thousands of manuscripts on astronomy, medicine, and law. These weren't primitive societies. They were epicenters of innovation and culture. The faces on these ancient statues were not just art. They were kings, queens, scholars, and scientists. Their noses were chiseled off, their features altered, in a deliberate attempt to disconnect them from their descendants, to sever the link between modern Africans and their glorious past. It was an act of cultural vandalism designed to justify subjugation. But the truth, like these stones, is resilient. Archaeologists, historians, and African scholars are now piecing together the real story. They're using advanced technology to analyze what remains in ancient texts, to give voice to the voiceless. We are learning that ancient Egypt was an African civilization, that the kingdom of Kush rivaled its northern neighbor in power and influence, and that trade routes connected Africa to the rest of the world long before European ships arrived. This is a journey of restoration. We are restoring the faces, the names, and the narratives. By telling the true story of Africa, we are not just rewriting history books. We are rewriting the future. We are empowering a new generation with the knowledge of their heritage, a heritage of strength, ingenuity, and profound humanity. There's something incredibly powerful about the truth. You can try to bury it deep beneath layers of lies and misconceptions. You can chip away at it, piece by piece, hoping to diminish its form. You can steal it, claiming it as your own or hiding it away in foreign museums and private collections. You can even try to rename it, giving it a new identity that serves a different story, a story that isn't its own. But here's the thing you can never, ever do. You can't erase it forever. Truth has this strange, persistent habit of resurfacing, of fighting its way back to the light. It's like a magnificent statue, buried for centuries under the shifting sands of time, slowly emerging as the winds of change blow. Its form, though weathered, is unmistakable. Its presence, undeniable. It's like an archaeologist's brush, gently sweeping away the dust and debris from a long-lost artifact, revealing the intricate details of a face that was thought to be gone forever. Each stroke of the brush brings back a feature, a story, a piece of a much larger, more beautiful picture. It's the face of a continent, the face of Africa, emerging from the shadows of a distorted history. This process, this uncovering, is like memory coming home. It's the return of stories that were silenced, the revival of cultures that were suppressed, and the restoration of a dignity that was stolen. For too long, the narrative of Africa has been written by others. The story told was one of darkness, of lack, of a people without history. But that was never the truth. The truth is a story of powerful kingdoms and brilliant empires. It's a story of groundbreaking innovations in science, mathematics, and astronomy. It's a story of profound philosophies, complex societies, an art that has inspired the world for millennia. The Benin bronzes, the walls of Great Zimbabwe, the scripts of ancient Ethiopia, these aren't just artifacts. They are paragraphs and chapters in a grand, epic novel that is still being written. We are now living in a time of incredible awakening. A generation is rising, armed with knowledge and technology, and they are reclaiming the narrative. They are the digital storytellers, the historians, the artists, the curators, and the activists who are piecing together the scattered fragments of their heritage. They are digging through archives, translating ancient texts, and using social media to share the truth with the world. This isn't just about correcting the past. It's about building a new future. It's about showing the world, and more importantly, ourselves, the true face of Africa, face of resilience, of creativity, of strength, and of boundless potential. This is the act of restoring what was chipped away, of bringing home what was stolen, and of calling things by their true names. And that's exactly what's happening now. All over the world, something is changing. It started quietly, a whisper in the halls of academia, a flicker of doubt in a dusty archive. But now, it's getting louder. A new generation of young historians is stepping up, and they're not just accepting the old stories. They're asking new, tougher questions. They're challenging the narratives we've been told for centuries. And here's the most exciting part. African scholars are now leading their own excavations. For the first time, they are the ones unearthing their own history, interpreting the artifacts, and telling their own stories from their own perspective. They're not waiting for permission or validation from anyone else. They're taking control of their own past. This is a monumental shift. Researchers are going back, rereading old colonial field notes, and they're finding things that don't add up. They're noticing major inconsistencies, omissions, and biases that were overlooked, or maybe ignored for a very long time. They're looking closer at those famous, damaged statues we've all seen in museums. You know, the ones with the missing noses and broken features. They're zooming in on the tool marks left behind, studying the fractures, analyzing exactly where and how the breaks happened, and they're all realizing something undeniable. This wasn't just the passage of time, the damage, the vandalism. It wasn't an act of nature. It wasn't a mystery lost to the ages. It was deliberate. It was people, specific people, with specific agendas, made specific decisions to erase a history. We're talking about specific eras of targeted erasure. A systematic campaign to deface and devalue an entire continent's heritage. The story has always been that these features were fragile, that they broke off accidentally during excavation or transport. But the evidence is telling a different, much darker story. It points to a conscious effort to remove the distinctively African features from these incredible works of art. And once you name it, once you call it what it is, an act of cultural vandalism, an attempt to rewrite history by force, it loses its power. Once you expose the lie, you can begin to reclaim the truth. The story of Africa is not one of passive decay. It's a story of survival, resilience, and now, restoration. We are witnessing the beginning of a historical reckoning, a moment where Africa's true face is finally being restored, and its real story is being rewritten by its own people. Thanks for watching. Follow for more as we uncover the truth together. Technology is a powerful ally in this journey of rediscovery. Modern science is giving us a lens to see what older scholars, perhaps deliberately, overlooked. We're talking about game-changing tools like DNA testing, satellite imaging, advanced facial reconstruction, and even pigment analysis on ancient artifacts. These aren't just fancy gadgets. They are instruments of truth, cutting through centuries of myth and misinterpretation. Let's take a look at one of the most exciting frontiers: ancient DNA. For years, the origins of many of Africa's great civilizations, like ancient Egypt, were clouded in debate, often with a clear bias to separate them from the rest of the continent. But now, scientists can extract DNA from mummies that are thousands of years old. And what are they finding? The results are shattering old narratives. They're discovering undeniable genetic links to sub-Saharan African populations. Not just weak connections or vague theories, but strong, clear links. This isn't guesswork anymore. This is data. This is hard evidence. This is scientific proof. What is truly amazing is that this cutting-edge science is confirming what the art has been telling us all along. Those statues, with their distinct features, the reliefs on temple walls, the portraits on sarcophagi, were never silent. They were historical documents carved in stone and painted with truth. It's almost poetic when you think about it. The art and the ancestors told the story first. Science, after all this time, is just catching up to confirm it. The faces of ancient Africa were always there, waiting for the world to be ready to see them for who they truly were. And this is just the beginning. With every new satellite image revealing a lost city, and every DNA sequence decoded, we are piecing together a more accurate, more complete picture of Africa's glorious past. We're not just rewriting history, we're reclaiming it. We are restoring the faces and voices that were silenced, and ensuring their legacy shines brightly for generations to come. This is more than just academic research. It's an act of restoration, a powerful testament to the resilience of truth. Have you ever walked through a museum in London, Paris, or Berlin and felt a strange sense of disconnect? You see these magnificent African statues, these intricate masks, these stunning royal artifacts, and you're told they're part of world history. But are they? Or are they African history, held captive thousands of miles from home? For centuries, the story of Africa has been told by everyone except Africans. It's a story of discovery by outsiders, a story of so-called primitive art, a story where the continent's own achievements are often footnotes in someone else's history book. This narrative has been shaped by the very powers that took not just land and resources, but also Africa's historical Salids artifacts. Think about the sheer scale of it. It is estimated that 90 to 95% of Africa's material cultural legacy resides outside the continent. 95%. Let that sink in. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of items. The Benin bronzes. In the British Museum, masterpieces of metallurgical art. The Bangwa Queen from Cameroon. A sculpture so full of life, it feels like it could speak. The Rosetta Stone, a key to ancient Egypt, sitting in London. These aren't just objects. They are witnesses to history. They are libraries of knowledge. They are ancestral voices carved in wood, cast in bronze and woven in fabric. And for too long, they've been silenced, locked away in foreign storerooms or displayed with labels that strip them of their true contexts and meaning. But something is shifting. There's a word that's gaining momentum, a word that carries the weight of justice and the promise of a new beginning. Repatriation. It means bringing these artifacts home, back to the land where they were created, back to the communities whose ancestors they represent. Because how can African history truly be taught and understood when its most important textbooks are locked away in European basements? How can a new generation of African children connect with their heritage when that heritage is displayed behind glass in a foreign country, often misunderstood and mislabeled? These objects are not mere curiosities. They are the tangible proof of Africa's glorious past. They are identity. They are memory. They are dignity. And dignity belongs at home. The argument against repatriation has always been that African nations do and have the facilities to care for these artifacts. It is an argument rooted in the same old colonial mindset, idea that Africa is incapable of managing its own legacy. But look at what's happening on the continent today. New, world-class museums are rising. The Museum of Black Civilizations in Dakar, Senegal. The Edo Museum of West African Art in Nigeria, designed specifically to house the returning Benin bronze. These aren't just buildings. They are declarations of sovereignty. They are institutions built by Africans, for Africans, ready to welcome their history home. The narrative that Africa isn't ready is an excuse, and it's an excuse that's running out of time. The conversation is no longer about asterisk if asterisk these artifacts should return, but asterisk how asterisk, and asterisk when asterisk. Imagine the ripple effect of this return. Picture a young girl in Ghana walking into a museum in Accra and seeing the golden regalia of the Asante kings, not as a photograph in a book, but right there, gleaming in front of her. Imagine a student in Ethiopia learning about the Aksumite Empire, not from a Western documentary, but by standing before the very artifacts that prove its power and ingenuity. When you see greatness that looks like you, that comes from your own people, something profound changes inside you. You stand a little taller. you dream a little bigger. The lie that your history began with colonialism evaporates. You realize you don't come from nothing. You come from kings, queens, scholars, and innovators. You come from everything. This is about more than just correcting a historical wrong. It's about building a future where African identity is defined by Africans themselves, where the stories told in museums, in Lagos, Kinshasa, or Addis Ababa are rich, authentic, and empowering. Repatriation is an act of healing. It's stitching back together the torn pages of a magnificent story. It is about giving the ancestors their voice back and ensuring the children of tomorrow can hear them loud and clear. This is the movement to restore Africa's face and rewrite its story in its own words. The journey is long, but the return is begun. That's why this conversation matters so much. This isn't just about statues, and it was never just about broken noses on ancient monuments. It's about the narrative. It's about who controls the story. Because whoever controls the story ultimately controls how people see themselves, their past, and their future. For centuries, Africa's story has been told almost exclusively by outsiders. It was a story that was filtered, edited, and often softened to fit a particular agenda. Key details were conveniently erased, great achievements were downplayed, and entire histories were This created a distorted image, a caricature that has lingered for far too long, impacting perceptions both within the continent and around the world. But things are changing now. Africans are taking back the pen. They are telling their own stories, in their own voices, with their own perspectives, all across the continent and the diaspora. A powerful movement is underway. Scholars are unearthing buried histories. Creators are bringing ancient glories to life through art, film, and digital media. Teachers are rewriting curriculums to reflect the truth of Africa's contributions to civilization. YouTubers are reaching millions, dismantling old myths, one video at a time. Researchers are piecing together the evidence that was once dismissed or ignored. Everywhere you look, voices are rising. They are rising with a clear, unified message. No more half-truths, no more silence, no more stolen credit. It's a declaration that Africa's story will no longer be a footnote in someone else's book. It is a main event, a rich and complex saga, filled with triumphs, innovations, and profound wisdom. This isn't about rewriting history to be something it wasn't. It's about restoring it to what it always was. It's about presenting a full, honest, and complete picture. It's about acknowledging the incredible legacies of empires like Kushaksum, Mali, and Great Zimbabwe. It's about celebrating the intellectual giants from centers of learning like Timbuktu. It is about recognizing the scientific and mathematical genius that gave the world some of its earliest and most enduring innovations. This is a journey of reclamation. It's about restoring the face of Africa, not just in stone and artifacts, but in the minds and hearts of people everywhere. It's about ensuring that future generations grow up with a story that empowers them. A story that is whole, true, and undeniably theirs. The real story of Africa is being told, and it's more powerful than you can imagine. Think back to where we started this journey. Remember those images? The statues with broken noses, the faces chipped away by time and by force. At first glance, what did you see? Primera sa dami. I saw loss, destruction, a history that felt like it was crumbling into dust. It looked like an attempt to erase a people, to make them forget who they were. It felt like a story of defeat. But now, after everything we've uncovered, I see them completely differently. And I hope you do too. Those broken noses aren't just scars of the past. They mean something else entirely. They are evidence, not evidence of weakness, but evidence of fear. Think about it. Why would anyone go to such lengths to deface a statue, to break its nose, to alter its features? You only try to erase something when you are profoundly afraid of its power. Nobody bothers to chip away at something they see as insignificant or weak. They chip away at greatness. They attack symbols of strength, of heritage, of a truth that threatens their own narrative. Those broken noses are a testament to the power that these images held, the pride they inspired, and the history they represented. It was a history so potent, so undeniable that colonizers and invaders felt they had to physically destroy it to maintain their dominance. They weren't just breaking stone, they were trying to break a spirit. They were attacking a legacy of kings, queens, scholars, and innovators. They understood that if a people know their history, if they see their own greatness reflected in the art of their ancestors, they cannot be easily controlled. A people with a proud past will always demand a dignified future. That's the real threat. Greatness threatens lies. The very existence of these powerful African likenesses was a direct contradiction to the colonial narrative of a continent without history or civilization. So they broke the noses. They tried to rewrite the story by force, to make the faces less African, less powerful, less real. But they failed. Because the truth is resilient. It survives in the fragments, in the stories passed down, in the scholarship that pieces it all back together, and it survives. And every time we learn, every time we share this history, we are rebuilding what was broken. We are restoring the face of a continent and reclaiming its true story. Those statues, even in their damaged state, are not symbols of loss anymore. They are monuments to a legacy so formidable that it had to be attacked. They are a permanent reminder that Africa's history is one of undeniable greatness, a greatness that was feared, but could never truly be erased. Have you ever looked at an ancient Egyptian statue and wondered, why are so many noses missing? Was it just time? Erosion? An accident? For centuries, that's the story we were told. But what if I told you that every single broken nose, every chipped feature, isn't a sign of decay, but a deliberate act of erasure, a desperate attempt to rewrite history? Let's unpack this. Imagine a civilization so advanced, so influential. It's so profoundly beautiful that it challenged the world's perception of power and identity. Now imagine someone else coming along, thousands of years later, and seeing that these powerful figures, these pharaohs, queens, and gods looked undeniably African. What do you do when the evidence of a great black civilization is literally carved in stone, staring you in the face? You can't destroy the pyramids. You can't unbuild the temples, but you can deface the statues. You can break the nose. You can chip the lips. You can try to obscure the features that scream of an African origin. This wasn't random vandalism. It was a systematic campaign. When Napoleon's army arrived in Egypt in the late 18th century, his scholars were baffled. The civilization they found didn't match the one they had read about. So, reports say his soldiers used the Great Sphinx for target practice, blowing off its nose. Why? Because a wide nose was a clear, undeniable marker of African ancestry. By removing it, they could create ambiguity, plant a seed of doubt, and superimpose their own narrative onto Egypt's history. This pattern repeats across countless artifacts. They weren't just breaking stones. They were trying to break a lineage, a connection. They wanted to sever modern Africa from its glorious, ancient past. By making these powerful figures ethnically ambiguous, they could claim their legacy, or at least deny it to its rightful heirs. It was a calculated move to control the historical narrative and, by extension, to justify colonialism and racial hierarchies. But here's the beautiful, powerful irony. Their attempt to erase the truth actually became the ultimate proof of it. Every missing nose is a scar that tells a story. It is a silent testament to the strength and significance of the identity they tried so hard to hide. It screams that African greatness was so real, so undeniable, that it had to be physically attacked. A perfect, intact statue is beautiful, but a defaced one tells a much deeper, more resonant story of survival against all odds. They tried to blur the face, but the outline of greatness remained. They tried to silence the story, but the stones themselves cry out the truth. They tried to rename and rebrand entire civilizations, but the ancestors' spirit remembers. They tried to erase Africa from the pages of history, but Africa endured. It is still here, resilient and proud, ready to reclaim its story. This isn't just about restoring statues. It's about restoring a truth that was stolen. The evidence is right there, in every powerful, defiant, noseless face. And now, the restoration begins. Not just of statues, but of memory, of pride, of truth. Because restoration isn't always physical. Sometimes, it's mental. It's looking at history and saying, we were Terry. We built that. We led that. We created that. We mattered, and we still matter. So next time you walk through a museum and you see a statue with a missing nose, don't just see damage. See survival, see resistance. See a story that refused to die. Because even broken, those statues lasted thousands of years. And if stone can survive that long, imagine how strong the people must have been. Imagine how strong their descendants still are. This is about more than just correcting a historical record. It's about reclaiming a narrative that was forcibly taken. It's about understanding that the deliberate defacement of these artifacts was an attempt to erase a legacy, to sever the connection between a great past and its present-day inheritors. The missing noses, the broken crowns, they weren't accidents of time. They were calculated acts meant to deny the identity and humanity of an entire continent. But they failed. They failed because the truth is resilient. It echoes in our DNA, in our cultures, in the art and music and spirit that flourishes across the globe. Restoring these stories isn't about rewriting history. It's about revealing it. It's about peeling back the layers of misinformation and prejudice to show the brilliant, complex, and powerful civilizations that thrived. It's about telling our children that their ancestors weren't just kings and queens, but innovators, astronomers, architects, and philosophers whose knowledge shaped the world. When we see these statues now, we see a testament to it. We see a people who, despite every effort to break them, left behind a legacy so profound that it couldn't be entirely erased. That strength didn't vanish, it transformed. It's the same strength we see in the artists, entrepreneurs, scientists, and leaders of the African diaspora today, who are building new empires and new legacies. So let's continue this restoration. Let's ask the hard questions. Let's support the creators and historians who are doing this work. Let's celebrate our heritage, not as something lost, but as something that has been waiting patiently to be The face of Africa is not broken. It is a mosaic of incredible strength and a story of a truly unbreakable spirit. They tried to chisel away the evidence, to smash the statues, to deface the monuments, to literally break the nose off of a civilization. For centuries, a story has been told, a story that tried to erase the true face of ancient glory, a story that tried to hide African identity in plain sight. They took hammers to stone, ink to paper, and whispered lies that echoed through generations, attempting to convince the world, and even us, that greatness belonged to someone else. But they failed. You see, the thing about truth is that it's resilient. It's like a river that's been dammed up. It will always find a way through. It seeps through the cracks. It erodes the barriers. And eventually, it bursts forth, powerful and undeniable. And that's what's happening right now. The truth of our history is resurfacing. And now, we are the ones holding the tools. We are the archaeologists of our own story, digging through the layers of misinformation. We are the historians, piecing together the fragments they tried to scatter. We are the storytellers, giving voice to the silent statues and the forgotten kings and queens. Piece by piece, artifact by artifact, story by story. We are restoring the picture, voice by voice. We are amplifying the whispers of our ancestors until they become a roar that shakes the very foundations of the old narrative. We are working until the history books, the museums, and the world's imagination finally reflect what has always been true, until history finally looks like what it always was. African, this isn't just about the past. It's about our present and our future. It's about understanding the shoulders we stand on. If this story opened your eyes, don't let it stop there. Share it. Send this video to someone who needs to see it. If it made you think, start a conversation. Talk about it with your friends, your family, your community. Don't let the curiosity fade. And if it made you proud, if you felt that spark of connection to a powerful legacy, then become a teacher. Teach someone else what you've learned. Because history isn't just something that's written in dusty books. It lives when we speak it. It thrives when we share it. It becomes immortal when we pass it on. So subscribe to the channel. Stay curious. Keep asking questions. Never accept a version of history that diminishes you. And never, ever let anyone tell you that your ancestors didn't build greatness. They did. They built empires. They pioneered science. They created art that inspires ode to this day. Have you ever looked at ancient Egyptian statues and wondered why so many have broken noses? For centuries, we've been told it was just the passage of time, accidents, or erosion. But what if that wasn't the whole story? What if it was a deliberate act to erase a truth? A truth about the identity, the features, and the heritage of the people who built one of the world's greatest civilizations. They broke the noses, attempting to sever the connection between a magnificent past and its rightful descendants. They tried to muddle the features, to obscure the evidence, but they couldn't break the truth. It was carved in stone, written in hieroglyphs, and passed down through generations. And now, that truth is finally breathing again. Scholars, artists, and storytellers are piecing it all back together, restoring Africa's face to its rightful place in history. The story is being rewritten, not with lies, but with undeniable facts. Thanks for watching. Have you ever looked closely at ancient Egyptian statues and wondered why so many have broken noses? For a long time, we were told it was just the ravages of time, accidental damage over thousands of years. But what if that wasn't the whole story? What if it was a deliberate act, an attempt to erase a people's identity, to sever their connection to a powerful legacy? They broke the noses, trying to suffocate the past, to make us forget who these great kings, queens, and scholars really were. They tried to break the truth. But a truth this powerful can't be buried forever. It finds a way to breathe again. Today, we are piecing together the fragments, reclaiming our history, and giving a voice back to our ancestors. The truth is finally breathing again, and it's a story the whole world needs to hear. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.